probably heard the advice that you should figure out who your best customers are and try to get more of them, and find out who your worst customers are and fire them. Well, there's maybe a little bit of truth to that, but there's a lot more to the story. In my 15-year journey at WP Engine, I came across this obscure analysis method called the profit whale curve. We used it to dramatically improve the company without firing a bunch of customers, as they say. So I'm going to show you how this works and how you can use it to make a much more profitable, happy company. So this is the profit whale curve. The reason it's called a whale curve is because if you're very creative, maybe you can see the shape of a whale in it, maybe. But look, if the alternative is a random acronym, this is better. It's like when people see animals in constellations. In fact, this is Cetus, the whale. And see, if this is a whale, then our curve can be a whale too. That's only fair. Of course, you know which constellation is my favorite. It's got to be Ursa Major, the bear. Although even I have to admit these stars don't really look like a bear either. But okay, people like seeing animals and random things, so okay, it's a whale. So let me show you how to compute this curve and how to use it to become much more profitable. The way we start is to compute the profit contributed by each customer. So for each customer, you take the revenue generated by that customer in the time period that you're analyzing. Now, this could be a single month, but since things can vary month by month, it's often better to take more like 6 months at a whack. Anyway, then you get the costs incurred by that customer during the same period. And this is generally the hard part, and you may not have a way of doing this right now. So stay tuned. At the end of the video, I'll give you some techniques that help you compute this properly. Okay, so then of course you just subtract the costs from the revenue to get the profit per customer. And some will be very profitable and some will be unprofitable and everything in between. So the next step is to sort the customers by how profitable they are, with the most profitable first and the least profitable last. And then we're going to do the final step needed for the profit whale, which is to calculate the cumulative profit customer by customer. So that means starting with the most profitable customer, we then go to the second most profitable and add their profit to get a running total. Then add the third customer's profit to the running total, and so on down the line. And of course, at the last customer, we will also have arrived at a total profit for the entire company. Well, profit only in a sense, because we're only considering the costs to serve customers, and of course, not all your other expenses are in there. This doesn't include marketing and sales and writing code and buying software and everything else. This is the cost to serve in terms of infrastructure, in terms of tech support as well. In any case, this cumulative profit, this is what we're plotting on the whale curve. So here's what that is. And this example here is real data. This is the curve that I computed back in 2012 for my company, WP Engine. You're looking at real data from almost 10,000 customers at a company that's now today worth billions of dollars. And we use this curve to do some smart things, which I'm going to show you. Now, you'll notice that the x-axis here isn't the number of customers, but rather a percentage of customers. So that's just the number of customers at that point divided by the total number of customers. And next, you'll also notice that the y-axis here isn't in dollars like our table was. It certainly can be in dollars, and you'll get exactly the same curve. But in this case, I've plotted the dollars as a percentage of that bottom line total cumulative profit. So the curve would always hit 100% on this definitionally. So right away, we can read off some very interesting things about our customer base. First of all, we see that the top 10% of our customers represents more than half of all our profit. This sort of Pareto principle shouldn't be surprising, but it's interesting to see the exact numbers. If you added that many more customers of this type, you would double your profit. This is an extremely convincing argument for why you should consider either shifting existing marketing spend or even layering on additional marketing spend in some highly targeted way. In fact, there's even a greater imbalance in here. The top 50 customers, 50, made up 20% of all profits at the entire company. So the obvious question is, what do these customers have in common, and how do we create marketing and sales campaigns to specifically target them so we can get a lot more of them? We already have 50, so we must be able to find 50 more, even at high cost, because we know it will pay off. Knowing that the cost is allowed to be high expands the possibilities of how much marketing and what kinds of marketing you can afford to do. However, you have to be careful here. It's possible that you're just charging too much money. It could be that they're on the wrong plan, in which case you could selfishly, greedily try to keep them there, but it might be better for your overall company health if you get them into a smaller plan that's also a more appropriate plan. Because if they're sitting there paying you way too much, they're going to wake up one day and they're going to be mad about that, and they may just leave without talking to you. Plus, you'll have a bad reputation from them. They may leave you bad reviews, and they're not going to recommend you to others and so forth. Now, before we get to those unprofitable customers at the end, you might notice that this curve has these obvious inflection points, places where the slope of the curve changes. These demarcate segments of customers. Often, all of these have insights, not just customers who are the most profitable and the least profitable. In this case, for example, we have this big, consistent set of customers in orange. Each customer individually isn't contributing that much profit. That's why the slope is small. But first of all, these represent 50% of our customers, so it's really important that we understand them. And second, for us at WP Engine, these were our customers paying for the smallest plan. And because the price is just $29 a month, the profit contribution can't be more than $29 per month either, but nearly all of them cost us very little. And therefore, these customers are actually quite profitable, and thus these orange customers are a wonderful, healthy, and profitable segment. See, if you only had the mentality that these customers are valuable and no one else is, you'd be wrong. In our case, the long tail is profitable. And there's strategic value in being the most popular choice. Like you have this brand leadership that will help you grow and win competitive sales deals. That strategic value won't appear on this chart, obviously, but it goes to show why this is an important segment. Okay, now we'll get to the tail of the whale, the unprofitable customers. The first thing we'll do is read off the chart just how unprofitable these customers are making us. In the case of WP Engine in 2012, the bottom 10% of customers were removing a quarter of our profits. And just like on the other side of the curve, most of the effect was from just a few very worst customers. In fact, the bottom 100 were causing us to lose $1 million a year. Obviously, we have to do something about that. Now, it's tempting to say, fire all those customers, then we'll instantly be a lot more profitable. But actually, that's usually wrong. And that's not what we did. Keeping a customer is the best thing that you can do. A customer you have, even if they're unprofitable, is still someone who's on your side. That's a customer you can work with. That's a customer you can still reason with. That's a customer who could improve over time. That's someone who could still recommend you to others, leave a positive review, give you a case study. There's still a lot of value in there. You don't want to just throw that away capriciously. Now, in our case, we looked at what was going on, and a lot of times there was something the customer could do that would remove the problem. The funniest example was a customer who at one point was the largest consumer of network transfer across our entire platform. They were using the most bandwidth. Now, they were paying $99 a month, but they were costing us thousands of dollars per month just in network transfer. So we looked into why this was happening. And we found that almost all the network transfer was due to a single image. What image? It was this tiny little Facebook like button, like a little thing in the corner of the website, except someone had blown that image up to the size of a mural that you would put on the size of a building and then saved it. So now the file size was as big as a full-length movie, and every visitor to the website was downloading this stupid image. Now, of course, the fix was easy. Just scale the image to a normal size. Problem solved. No need to fire the customer. And of course, the visitors to the customer's website have a better experience also. And this is the point. Often there's a solution that's better for everyone where you keep the customer, but also solve the profitability problem. Now, sometimes the solution is that the customer needs to pay more. One example that comes up at WP Engine is when someone's hosting videos. This also costs a lot in network transfer for streaming and hosting, so we give them a choice. Either they can put their movies on any public cloud and pay them for storage and transfer costs, or they can stay with WP Engine and we'll just have to charge them extra for network transfer. And at first, the customers were understandably upset that they would have to pay a lot more, but when they priced it out at the cloud providers, they realized that WP Engine was cheaper even with the extra charges, and they stayed with us. So you should do everything in your power to keep the customer, but at least get them to break even, if not profitable. Now, there's another unprofitable condition in which you should keep the customer. Maybe the problem isn't with the customer at all. The problem is you and your product. For example, what if a customer is using way too much tech support? They're calling every day, and that's unprofitable. So do you need to part ways? Well, why is the customer having to call tech support? What if the problem is your product? Maybe your product doesn't let the customer see what they need to see, so they have to call support to get that information. Maybe your product doesn't do what the customer needs to do, so they have to call support to get it done manually. Maybe your product is just confusing to use. In these cases, you should keep the customer and fix the product. Your customers will automatically become more profitable when your product improves. The last thing you'd want to do is push those customers away. They're effectively telling you how to improve your product. Another possibility is you realize it makes sense for the customer to be using a lot of support. You just need to charge them enough to service them. This is typically called professional services or paid account management. The point is that if the customer is willing to pay the costs, you can not only keep the customer and stay profitable, you might keep the customer for a long time because you're willing to do exactly what they need. Now, sometimes it really is time to part ways. And why would this be? Well, one reason would be if the product is truly not a fit for the customer. The customer is trying to do something the product is simply not designed to do. The customer is not your ideal customer, so everyone should just realize the product's not a fit. The customer simply needs to move on. Another reason why it might actually be time to part ways is if you go to the customer with all this information and even come with solutions for them, and they still say no, refuse to negotiate, refuse to listen, refuse to do anything about it. And, well, the best relationship is a partnership where neither side is being taken advantage of. So if the customer simply refuses to have a healthy relationship, then it really is right for the customer to leave. And that's the reason. It's not really about profitability. The profitability is a signal that something is wrong. The real reason this isn't working is that this is not a healthy relationship. The customer deserves to be in a place where they do have a relationship, and so do you. And so we finally have the full story of the unprofitable end of the whale curve. You do need to take action because acting on relatively few customers will have a drastic impact on your profitability, but you should do everything in your power to keep customers and only part ways if there's no other rational choice. Now, we've covered some direct value you can get from the profit whale curve, but there's even more insight you can get from this data if you do one more quick calculation. So here's how that works. We call our table of customers with their revenue, and then we computed costs, then profit, and then finally the cumulative profit, which is what we plotted on the whale curve. Now, also compute the cumulative revenue. So this is just the running total of revenue, just like we had a running total of profit. And then we compute what is called the gross profit margin. This means you take the profit and you divide it by revenue. A good way of thinking about this is the percent of revenue left over after paying for servicing the customers. So we make this calculation for cumulative profit divided by cumulative revenue. So we end up with another sort of profit whale curve, except instead of absolute dollars of profit, it's the percentage of revenue that we keep as profit. Plotting this gross profit margin, we get another view of the data, which tells us something new. I guess it could also look like a whale if we really felt like it, but anyway, the thing we immediately notice is that for 90% of the customer base, in my case, our gross profit margin is pretty darn steady at 80%, which is a great number. If you search on the internet, you'll see what good gross profit margins are for your industry. 80% is top tier for software companies, so this is great. Also, remember before what I said about this half of the customer base, which was actually profitable and healthy? And remember how it was hard to tell that from the absolute dollar version of the chart? Well, now it's really obvious that these customers are profitable because they're maintaining this 80% margin. So you can see that while the first chart is also useful, because it's very useful to look at dollars, especially to see about the largest customers, this view is important too, because you can more easily understand the case of customers who contribute less absolute dollars and whether they're profitable or not, like this segment, which is half of our customers. And then, of course, we have this massive drop-off as we hit the unprofitable customers, as we already know, but the magnitude of this impact on gross profit margin is even more dramatic than in absolute dollars. We go from this 80% level to 55%, a terrible number. This is so bad that might mean we couldn't raise money. Except because we have this gross profit margin whale chart, we can easily show that the business as a whole is primarily 80%, and what we need to do next is attack this bottom 10%. And when we do, we'll have an 80% profit margin business. With this information in hand as one slide, you could easily raise money because you can show the business is fundamentally profitable and you even know what to do next. Or if you prefer not raising money, of course, this is all still just about profit. So the same arguments apply and the same end goal to generate more money, which you can either spend on the company or dividend out for yourself and employees. In this example of WP Engine in 2012, it was even more extreme. The bottom 150 customers dropped us from a 70% margin to 55%. Just 150 customers, again, out of nearly 10,000. And again, 70% is a fantastic gross profit margin. So we don't even have to address the entire unprofitable tail, just address the bottom 150. We could make it a priority for the company saying, look, we're going to make a list of these 150 customers, and then over the next 3 to 6 months, we're going to manage every single customer according to our principles, which is to try to save the customer through reducing their costs, or save the customer by charging them enough, or seeing that it's our own fault and fixing the product, or as a very last resort, we will part ways with the customer. This is an extremely actionable thing to do that dramatically changes the profit profile of the business, and seeing how 150 were different from the rest is obvious from the gross profit margin version of the curve, but not as obvious from the previous whale curve, even though it's the same data. So that's why making this gross margin version of the whale chart is so useful. And so there you have it, the complete story of how the profit whale curve can help you identify the best customer segments so you can focus on getting more of them, and to identify the unprofitable segments and address them so you get substantially more profitable. Now, before we go, earlier I mentioned that it can be difficult to compute the cost per customer, and that I would show a general technique for how to do this. So let's do that now. We're going to figure out how to compute this cost. In this example, I'm going to determine infrastructure storage costs. So this might be some attached storage or some other storage that each customer is using. But you can use this exact same technique to look at costs in tech support or anywhere else. So for each customer, start by determining how much storage they're using. This might come from information you have in a database or by looking at files on disk. Then simply divide each customer's usage by the total to get the percentage of the total that they're using. Then go to your cloud invoices and see how much you're paying for storage today in total. Now, this is probably more than you think because you're using, let's say, attached disks And you generally have to allocate more than you're using, especially accounting for future growth. And don't forget backups. So you might have image snapshots of disks, or you might have backup to S3. And don't forget about usage costs like bytes transferred or I/O or however else the cloud provider dings you for storage. Okay, so finally, you simply multiply the percentage usage by the total cost to get the cost allocated to every customer. The keyword here is allocated. We're applying the total cost to each customer weighted by how much they use that service. So all infrastructure costs can be computed in the same way, and support costs could be done also by, let's say, the total cost per ticket, or maybe you have something slightly more granular, like the number of inbound communications or even amount of time, so that complex, drawn-out tickets are weighted more. And if your credit card fees or other transaction fees are a substantial percentage of revenue, especially for low-dollar customers, that might be important to include also. In any case, that's how you get these costs per customer and end up with your whale curve. So focus your marketing and sales on the profitable head and address your unprofitable tail, and together dramatically improve the profitability of your company.